Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can tell by the title of today's video, I tested positive for SIBO, which stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And honestly, I'm not at all surprised. My symptoms have just been getting really bad. So it's not like I wanted to find something wrong with me, but at the same time, I just needed to find an answer. I've had a really hard time digesting foods, and it's kind of theorized that, when you have this bad bacteria in your small intestine, that it can disrupt digestive enzymes. So I'm hoping that, once we treat the SIBO and get it kind of out of my life, that I can start eating more foods again. Basically, this whole video is just me kind of chatting with you guys about, dietary sensitivities, dietary restrictions for health reasons, and whatever else, and just kind of learning how we can still have food freedom and still love food and have it be a part of our lives, even though maybe we can't eat certain foods. So I hope that this will encourage you if you're struggling, because I know that it's super difficult as a young person to have to deal with this. It just kind of limits your life. We want to go out with friends to eat pizza, we want to go out to restaurants, but sometimes when you have these dietary issues, you just can't do that. So I hope that this will be an encouragement to you, and yeah, let's just get on with the video. Alright guys, so tonight is the night that I'm starting the diet for the SIBO test, and yeah, it's going to be kind of tricky. Very limited what you can eat on this special diet before you have to do this test. I'm going to have to make do with what I can, but yeah, I'm going to make dinner tonight. I know for SIBO diet, the one that I was given at least, said I could eat limited amounts of bread, but I have such a bad gluten sensitivity that I can't eat bread at all, or any gluten or anything like that. So yeah, we're gonna have to see how this works. And I love good sweet potatoes and white potatoes, but they also say you can't have that. It's kind of like all my favorite things are gone, so it's okay. It's only for like a day and a half. I'll survive. But yeah, so let's go grab some dinner right now. So for some background, these last 2 years I've experienced a ton of terrible GI symptoms. Last fall was when everything was at its worst. I became so weak that I could barely go up the stairs. I was miserable and needed to find an answer. So after running many different tests that were all negative, we finally decided to do the SIBO test to see if I had small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Good morning, so it's the next day. Last night it was very difficult just to eat, the prescribed plan for the meal. I was really wanting dessert and chocolate and all these things, so it's definitely kind of tricky. Definitely feel a little bit weaker just because I'm not eating my normal foods like potatoes and all that stuff, so it's just kind of how it is. But I'm gonna make breakfast right now. So my sensitivity to gluten is so severe that a lot of my symptoms are very celiac-like, from joint pain to gut irritation. We still have to do further testing, but all I know is when I incorporate gluten into my diet, my joint pain is so severe. It was to the point where my violin fingers were suffering. I feel bad that I can't have gluten, but at the end of the day, I have to take care of the body I have. So if you have dietary restrictions for health reasons like me, don't ever feel guilty for it. I'm slowly learning how to love myself even if I can't eat certain foods. Alright, I've just finished breakfast, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm totally missing my normal smoothie bowl in the morning, and I definitely am craving fruit because a lot of the fruits you cannot eat at all, and then some of the fruits you can eat but in very small amounts. Yeah, the test will actually be tomorrow, and then we can go back to eating like normal. So this was today's lunch. Basically, I just picked random foods from a list that my doctor gave me that were allowed for the SIBO prep diet. Experiences like this just remind me how grateful I am for a variety of foods, because this was getting a little bit monotonous. Alright guys, so it is much later after lunch. It's 5 p.m. We're probably gonna get ready to eat dinner, but I'm kind of hungry right now, and literally it is so hard. Basically the options are meats, all meats, a few vegetables, and very limited fruit, and I really just want peanut butter right now. We're gonna make do till dinner with some grapefruit juice. I can have fruit juice, which is kind of weird. It must be something with the fiber. They don't want the fiber, so we'll see how this goes. Okay, this looks gorgeous. Can we just appreciate the color? It's this gorgeous coral color. It's really good. I will definitely say with this whole thing, I have been in need of some carbs like potatoes. If you can't have bread, you're really low on carbs, so I can tell like throughout this last day and a half that I've been like very sluggish. I'm very looking forward to tomorrow when I can eat normal food again after the test. And then I had more juice because I was still feeling a bit hypoglycemic, but hey, I love a good juice box, so I'm not complaining. Anyway, after that I went on a little walk outside, and then it was time for dinner. I cooked up some ground turkey and yellow pepper with taco seasoning, and then of course I had some cornflakes. I know, super odd combination. Thankfully, small amounts of fruit were allowed, so I had some pineapple to end off the night before my 12-hour fast leading up to the SIBO test. I think this tastes a little fermented. Alright, hello friends! Today is the next day and it's the day of my SIBO test. So it's about 8 a.m. right now and we're gonna leave. Last night was really hard for me. I'm like so hungry. I thought it was pretty difficult for me, but you know, if you're not like me, maybe it's not this difficult. I'm just being dramatic. And it's a breath test, so it takes about 2 hours just breathing in and out of a bag or something, like periodically. So yeah, we're gonna go right now. Alright, so we are back from the SIBO test. I didn't film any of that, so you're just gonna have to imagine me doing that. So basically like blowing into a little tube and then waiting a long time, then doing it again, then waiting. So it's kind of that like tedious process. Now 11 o'clock, so I'm gonna have my first meal of the day really late actually, like almost lunchtime, but I'm gonna have breakfast. I'm gonna have a smoothie bowl. I thought I would just extend the video to kind of show normally what I would eat if I wasn't on the prep diet for SIBO test. And yeah, so let's go make our smoothie bowl right now. So I thought for the rest of this video, I would just talk about what it's like to live with severe GI issues. If you also have these problems, I sympathize with you and hope that you can feel encouraged about this topic after this video. GI issues usually mean that people like me can't just eat anything we want. We have to check every ingredient label on the package. We have to ask the waitress a million questions about the food at the restaurant to make sure it doesn't contain any foods that cause us pain, or any foods that worsen a particular health condition. It can get really complicated, and for me, I know I get easily irritated with myself even when I shouldn't be. When I'm at prom and I can't eat the food that's being served, having to eat before every event because most dishes contain gluten. It's all frustrating, but I know I'm supposed to learn something through this trial, even though I know it's terrible sometimes. Not being able to eat certain foods requires a ton of planning, and with my history, I know that putting so much thought into the food I eat can be problematic. I want to have food freedom, but at the same time, I feel like I can't because of my dietary restrictions for my health. Now that I'm recovered from my eating disorder, I just want to live my life freely without putting so much thought into what I'm going to eat next. But I have to plan out my meals if I want to eat, especially if I'm going out. So there's a bit of a dilemma. Anytime I don't plan, I either get insanely hungry because I could find only a few things to eat, or I just eat whatever food I find, which usually ends in a terrible stomachache where I'm rolling on the floor. So oftentimes you'll see me meal prep many batches of pancakes to take with me for breakfast when we're on the road or staying in a hotel. For me to properly fuel my body, I have to plan ahead, and I don't think that's bad at all. In fact, I think it's really wise to do this if you have similar issues. You just have to make sure that you're being honest with yourself. Are you not eating this particular food because it truly hurts your body, i.e. terrible stomach aches, joint pain and headaches, or because you're afraid of the calories? I know that gluten causes me intense pain, so I eliminated it for reason number one. But say gluten doesn't really make you feel bad physically. In fact, your body digests it normally. But say you decide to eliminate it from your diet so that you won't be tempted by cake, pastries, pasta, or cookies anymore. Well, that would be a fear food.
It's okay, it just breaks apart. Look how pretty this plate is. Oh my goodness, all the colors.
Just make sure that what you're doing is for your overall health and happiness, not for a certain body. Restricting foods because of health reasons is different than restricting foods because you fear them. If I could go back in life and eat more pizza, donuts, or my grandmother's baozi, I would. If I'd known that someday my ability to digest gluten and a lot of other grains would be gone, I wouldn't have restricted them. You really don't know what you have until it's gone. So to all of you out there who are struggling with disordered eating, I cannot urge you enough to start living now. Stop worrying about that brownie you had yesterday and stop planning all your food so that you can make sure to stay under your calories for the day. Of course, living isn't just about food, but food is a part of our life and it's meant to be enjoyed. I'm not saying to go eat 3 whole pizzas right now, but I'm saying to be grateful for what you have and to not intentionally or unintentionally sabotage that. don't restrict certain foods. Don't tell yourself that you're eliminating dairy because some influencer said it was bad for you. Looking back, I greatly regret restricting certain foods when I was younger. If I hadn't restricted, I'm sure things wouldn't be the same way they are today. I know there's nothing I can do to change the past, but I do know that I can start today. I can start doing things to live my best life for God's glory. I can refuse to listen to diet culture, and I can choose to live life in a balanced and meaningful way without having food guilt. I taste it's kind of a dark chocolate.
Okay. Any comments?
It's a lot to chew on. I've shoved like this whole half thing in my mouth.
I think I'm going to burn more calories chewing this than exercise.
What did you taste?
I don't know, I was so worried about it sticking to my teeth.
Why?
I don't know. I would not have had yet tried this. You need a whole new set of dentures.
It wasn't that sticky like that. Was it?
But if it's healthy and all that, it's not bad.
Then this is the mint one now. Mint. Since I've talked about bits and pieces of my story, I thought I would bring everything together to make my story a bit clearer. So I've always had issues with gluten. I grew up having stomach aches pretty much every day, but I just got used to it and thought it was normal, even though it wasn't. I always ate whole grain bread and did pretty well with it, but I always had a lot of constipation issues, not to get TMI, but that's the truth. My issues with gluten escalated in the summer leading up to my junior year of high school, basically 2020 when the pandemic hit. But when I was struggling the most with my eating disorder, I stopped eating bread altogether because I thought it wasn't worth my calories. My mindset was so wrong. But now that I've recovered, I eat what I want and just live life without anxiety around food. My past self never would have imagined that one day I would have a positive relationship with food. But I got there, and so can you. So here's another question that often pops into my head. How can I eat intuitively and have food freedom when I have dietary restrictions for health reasons? I know I often speak about food freedom and intuitive eating, but it seems a bit contradicting when you have dietary restrictions.
I think you could. Just slow it way down.
My take on it is, you might not be able to eat that food because you feel terrible after eating it, but you can still get to eat the other foods you want, just maybe not the ones that make you feel bad. The whole point of intuitive eating in the first place is to eat what feels good to you and your individual needs. So if you can't have gluten because it makes you feel completely awful, then don't eat it. If you can't eat something, don't categorize it as restriction. Refraining from those foods isn't inherently restriction. You're simply being wise about what you're putting in your body so that you're not hurting yourself unnecessarily. For example, people with celiac disease can't eat gluten at all. It actually flattens their intestinal villi, which cuts down surface area for nutrient absorption. So it's critical for their overall health that they stay as far away from gluten as possible. But you see, the intention to eliminate gluten isn't because they deem bread, pasta, and pastries as bad. It's because if they eat gluten, they'll be damaging their bodies, which can lead to terrible health. So when having dietary restrictions, it's just important to realize that what you're doing isn't out of fear of food, it's just to protect your body.
It looks good.
It looks okay.
Why? You don't like the color? You know what? You're missing carrots.
So anytime you see me not eating real bread or a bunch of grains, it's for that reason alone. If it makes me feel bad, I'm not gonna eat it. God, this is really good. Something different, I haven't had this. Bamboo. You should never start cutting things out of your diet unless specified by a physician or professional. I believe that permanently removing gluten from my diet for over a year made it super hard for me to digest it later on. I've tried adding gluten in the form of bread or pasta back in slowly, but my symptoms of joint pain, fatigue, headaches, and tenesmus have continued. This might have happened even if I'd continued to eat gluten, but there's also a strong probability that cutting out lots of foods during my eating disorder made things even worse. One study that Abby Sharp referred to in one of her videos said that 50% of people with eating disorders ended up with IBS, and 98% met the criteria for one or more functional gut disorders. If this doesn't scare you, I don't know what does. I'm not saying this is necessarily what happened to me, but it's likely. I'm not saying this to scare you, but to simply inform you. If I'd known how drastically my eating disorder would later affect my quality of life, I may have thought to get help when I was struggling. Every day that goes by that you're restricting foods makes things worse, so I really encourage you to get help from a professional if you're struggling with food. I know that in the moment back then, I wasn't thinking about how this would affect my periods, digestive system, or overall health. All I cared about was being smaller. But for those of you struggling with your relationship with food, I hope these statistics will at least get you thinking about the ramifications of your decisions today. If not dealt with, disordered eating can possibly lead to permanent digestive issues, and I don't want you to have to go through that. As a side note, I also know that people can do everything right and still be diagnosed with terrible GI conditions. But for those of you who do have time to reverse disordered eating, why not start today? Isn't a healthy future self more important to you than your desire to fit society's temporary beauty standards? I wish I would have thought about this question a couple years ago, but I hope today you'll think about this very important question. If I could go back and change the past, I would. But through my GI issues, I can empathize with those who struggle with that or their health in general. God works everything for good, so if you've done something that you regret, know that God is with you and He can use that to empower people around you. He can use your story. I know that for me, if I didn't have all these digestive issues, I probably wouldn't be where I am today studying what I'm planning on studying in college. And it takes time to look back and see why things happened the way they did. The way God intentionally made everything happen for a reason, even when it seemed hopeless at the time. For me, I felt incredible guilt over my past eating disorder, feeling like I never should have become a victim of that. But I realized that everyone struggles with something. For me, it was that. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Now I see it as a tool in my toolbox to encourage and share my experience with other girls going through the same thing. Dad, you can try some of the fries if you want.
Okay.
Very good.
Sneaking away into rooftop skies.
Why is it people you can't trust are always saying, trust me?
Ah!
I don't mean when you
I hate you! Well, you just said it! Yeah, no, down! You know that's more hurtful! Oh, you just said it!
Of course, in a perfect world that wouldn't have happened, but I'm grateful to see that the Lord is using this to further His kingdom, and I think that's something to keep in mind if you're struggling with your health. Obviously, no one wants to have something wrong with them, but all we can do is use what we're given. You each have a unique story to tell. Even if you can't eat certain foods or you have health issues or whatever it may be, realize that God has a plan for your life, even if you don't see it yet. Know that you're so loved, and I hope today you'll live life to the fullest.
You got the summertime love. I work for your heart all night till the dawn. You stay when they switched up. I know you're the one. They go and they come. You like the summer breeze.